In a dusty desert airbase, a 60-year-old woman with gentle eyes meticulously services an Apache's 30mm cannon. The young soldiers see a harmless grandma. A decorated pilot sees a ghost. The moment he spots her faded patch, time stops. The desert wind was a constant, abrasive whisper at Kestrel Forward Operating Base, carrying fine sand that settled on everything. It coated the skin, got into the coffee, and dusted the hulking forms of the H-64 Apaches in Hangar 7. It was here, in the cool, cavernous shade of the hangar, that Eleonora Vance found her sanctuary. At 60, with silver-gray hair neatly pinned in a bun and a constellation of laugh lines around her kind eyes, she was an anomaly, a relic from a different era amidst the taut energy of soldiers young enough to be her grandchildren. Her official title was Senior Armament Technician, but to the young airmen and mechanics, she was just Nora, the quiet, grandmotherly figure who moved with a slow, deliberate grace. They treated her with a kind of gentle condescension. When she carried her heavy toolkit, a young corporal would invariably rush over. "Let me get that for you, Nora," he'd say, his voice laced with the earnest concern one might show a frail relative. She would always offer a soft smile and allow it, understanding that their perception of her as fragile was the cornerstone of her camouflage. Her hands, however, told a different story. Though the skin was thin and marked with the occasional age spot, they were unervingly steady. As she disassembled the M230 chain cannon of the Apache designated Valkyrie 7, her fingers moved with the fluid precision of a master watchmaker. Each pin, spring, and gear was removed, cleaned, and inspected with an economy of motion that bordered on surgical. The young mechanics, when they bothered to watch, saw only the slow, methodical pace of an old woman. They didn't see the absolute certainty in every touch, the ingrained knowledge that required no conscious thought. Captain Julian Cole, the hangar commander, saw only an obstacle. He was young, ambitious, and wore his authority like a brand new uniform, stiff and a little too large for him. He strode toward her, clipboard in hand, his boots echoing his impatience. "Vance," he snapped, not bothering with her first name. "I need Valkyrie 7 flight ready by 1300. We have a priority sortie. Can you handle that?" His tone implied she couldn't. Nora didn't look up from the intricate firing mechanism cradled in her lap. "It will be ready, Captain," she said, her voice quiet but clear. "See that it is," Cole said, already turning away. "And try to keep up. We're on a war footing here, not a retirement schedule." A few of the younger mechanics nearby snickered. Nora gave no reaction. She had endured far worse than the casual cruelty of an insecure officer. She had spent 5 years cultivating this persona of harmless invisibility. Before Kestrel, it was a supply depot in Germany. Before that, a motor pool in Korea. Always in the background, always overlooked. It was the perfect place for a ghost to hide. She continued her work, the familiar scent of solvent and gun oil, a comforting balm. She allowed her mind to drift, a dangerous indulgence. She saw the faces of her team, young and vibrant, laughing in the belly of a C-130. A sharp pang of loss, still raw after all these years, tightened her chest. She quickly pushed it down. Emotion was a liability. Later, as she reached for a torque wrench, the loose sleeve of her maintenance coveralls slid down her arm. For a brief moment, a scar was exposed on her inner wrist. It was not the clean line of surgical incision or the jagged tear from a piece of shrapnel. It was a puckered, ugly mark, the kind left by a white-hot piece of metal held against the skin for a very long time. It was a brand. She quickly pulled the sleeve back down, her movements a little too fast, a little too sharp. She glanced around the hangar. No one had noticed. She was still just Nora, invisible. The midday sun beat down on the tarmac, and the heat in Hangar 7 became a thick, suffocating blanket. Nora worked on, her focus absolute. The symphony of the base was in full swing. The whine of turbines, the clang of metal on metal, the shouted orders and easy laughter of the soldiers. She was an island of silence in the middle of it all. Major Liam Donovan stormed into the hangar, late for a pre-flight briefing. A decorated pilot with the easy confidence of a man who had faced death and made it blink, Donovan was a living legend at Kestrel. His flight suit was a roadmap of a storied career, adorned with patches that spoke of combat tours in forgotten hellholes and qualifications few could dream of earning. Authority clung to him not like a uniform, but like a second skin. He was moving fast, his mind already in the cockpit, when a flicker of something out of place snagged his peripheral vision. He skidded to a halt, his helmet nearly slipping from his grasp. He turned his head slowly, his gaze locking onto the old woman working on Valkyrie 7. It wasn't her that stopped him. It was the patch. In the sweltering heat, Nora had rolled up her sleeves. Partially visible on her upper arm, just below the shoulder, was a small, faded patch. It was black and silver, its design intricate and worn by the passage of time. It depicted a serpentine, winged dragon, a wyvern, coiled and ready to strike. Donovan's breath caught in his throat. His hurried demeanor evaporated, replaced by a stunned, almost fearful reverence. The blood drained from his face. He took a slow, hesitant step forward, his earlier rush completely forgotten. The cacophony of the hangar seemed to fade into a dull roar. "That patch," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Is that real?" Nora didn't look up. Her hands, those steady, wrinkled hands, continued to reassemble a component of the cannon's feed system. She offered no reply, no acknowledgement that he had even spoken. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken history. Finally, after a moment that felt like an eternity, she gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. Donovan set his helmet down on a nearby crate with deliberate care. He approached her as one might approach a sleeping predator, his every movement cautious. "Wyvern Cell." He breathed the name like a prayer, a curse. "You were Wyvern." She remained silent, her hands never ceasing their methodical work. "That's not possible," Donovan continued, his voice shaking slightly, speaking more to himself than to her. "The official records, the files are sealed, but the story is they were all listed Kia. After the Samirand incident, every last one of them." At this, Nora finally paused. She placed her tool on the workbench and slowly looked up at him. Her eyes, usually so gentle, were now ancient and hard, filled with a chilling emptiness that seemed to suck the air from his lungs. She said nothing, but her gaze was a physical force, a silent command that silenced him instantly. It was a look that held the weight of ghosts, of fire and betrayal. It was a look no ordinary technician should ever possess. Donovan, the decorated hero of Kestrel, straightened involuntarily, his posture snapping to a rigid, unconscious state of attention. I'll be discreet," he stammered, his voice now hushed and respectful. He fumbled for his helmet, gave her one last, backward glance of pure disbelief, and hurried away, his world completely upended. Major Donovan's discovery sent ripples through the highest echelons of Kestrel Base. He didn't gossip, but a man of his stature speaking in urgent, hushed tones to the base executive officer in a secluded corner of the officers' club was enough to ignite a firestorm of speculation. Within the hour, the atmosphere in Hangar 7 began to shift. The change was subtle at first. A pair of senior NCOs, master sergeants with decades of service, walked through the hangar on some manufactured pretext, their eyes lingering on Nora for a moment too long before they exchanged a look of profound disbelief and quietly departed. Captain Cole noticed the change. He saw the XO himself walk to the hangar entrance, peer inside for a long moment, and then leave while speaking urgently into his radio. Cole's arrogance began to curdle into confusion. He watched as small groups of senior officers and veteran pilots found reasons to pass by Valkyrie 7. Their casual facades were paper-thin. They weren't looking at the Apache. They were looking at the old woman tending to it. "What the hell is going on?" Cole demanded of a grizzled master gunnery sergeant who was overseeing a maintenance check nearby. The old gunny, a man who had forgotten more about military hardware than Cole would ever learn, just shook his head slowly, his eyes wide. "That woman, sir," he said, his voice low. The one you've been riding all week? Look at her arm. The patch. Oh, what? It's just some old unit patch. Cole scoffed, though his confidence was wavering. No, sir, the gunny replied, his voice dropping to a whisper. That's a wyvern cell patch. They were ghosts. Black Ops doesn't even begin to cover it. The kind of unit that officially never existed. They went into places so dark that Delta Force would get nosebleeds just thinking about them. Legend says they answered only to a handful of people in the Pentagon, and they all died in Samurand 5 years ago. Cole stared, his mouth suddenly dry. That's insane. She's just a tech. An old woman who can barely lift her own toolbox. That's what makes it so damn strange, sir, the gunny said, his gaze fixed on Nora. If that patch is real, she's not just some tech. She's a ghost walking in the daylight. Cole's world began to tilt. He replayed his interactions with her, his dismissive tone, his condescending remarks, his impatience. The woman he'd treated like a slow-witted janitor had been maintaining a multi-million-dollar weapon system with flawless precision. Not a single write-up, not one failed inspection. Flawless. By late afternoon, the hangar had grown unnaturally quiet. Two stern-faced men in unmarked uniforms, the kind that screamed intelligence, had taken up positions near the main entrance. They didn't speak to anyone. They just watched. The final act began when a black Humvee pulled up outside. The base commander, Colonel Marcus Thorne, stepped out. He was a hard, no-nonsense man, not prone to casual visits. He was flanked by two more individuals who carried the unmistakable aura of high-level intelligence operatives. Thorne strode into the hangar, his eyes immediately finding Nora. He studied her for a long, silent moment. His aide rushed to his side, whispered something while looking at a tablet, and the colonel's expression shifted from stern curiosity to outright shock. He straightened his uniform, a gesture of respect, and walked directly toward Nora, his boots echoing in the now silent hangar. He stopped a respectful 10 feet away. Every eye was on them. Even the desert wind seemed to hold its breath. Eleonora Vance, Colonel Thorne said, his voice formal and carrying across the vast space. The use of her full name was a thunderclap. I'm sorry, that's Lieutenant Colonel Vance. A collective gasp swept through the onlookers. Captain Cole went white as a sheet. Thorne continued, his voice filled with a new, profound respect. The Pentagon just confirmed your identity. Wyvern Cell, Operation Midnight Protocol. The only survivor of the Samurand incident. The report says you were declared killed in action 5 years ago. Ma'am, please explain why you are here. For the first time since arriving at Kestrel, Nora stood to her full height. The slightly stooped posture of the elderly technician vanished, replaced by the ramrod straightness of a career officer. She turned to face the assembly, her gaze sweeping over the stunned faces, lingering for a fraction of a second on Captain Cole's pale, horrified expression. Because dead women aren't questioned, Colonel, she said. Her voice, though quiet, was steady and carried an authority that silenced every corner of the hangar. And I needed the quiet. I needed to be invisible while I hunted the man who betrayed my team. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Your team was ambushed during extraction, Thorne stated, reciting the official history. Intelligence assessed a catastrophic security leak. The leak wasn't catastrophic, Colonel. It was precise. Nora corrected him, her voice turning to ice. It came from within, not from Wyvern Cell, but from the command structure that supported us. Specifically, from Joint Base Archer. Vanguard wasn't operational 5 years ago, Thorne said, confused. No, Nora agreed. But over half of your senior staff, including some of the pilots and intelligence analysts, were transferred from Archer when it was decommissioned. She walked over to the Apache's cockpit, her movements now imbued with a sharp, predatory grace. May I? She asked, gesturing to the avionics panel. Thorne, momentarily speechless, simply nodded. Nora's fingers flew across the console, entering a series of commands that no maintenance tech should know. The main display screen, usually showing targeting data, flickered to life with a complex map overlaid with encrypted communication logs. For the past 5 years, I've been a ghost in the machine, For the last 7 months here at Kestrel, I've been tracking encrypted data packets moving through your systems. Someone on this base has been feeding operational details, flight patterns, mission objectives, surveillance windows, to a private military corporation. She let the name hang in the air. Obsidian Hand. Major Donovan stepped forward, his face grim. Obsidian Hand is a legitimate defense contractor. They handle security for diplomatic posts, logistics. They're also the world's most sophisticated arms dealers. Nora cut in, her eyes flashing. Selling our own classified technology to the highest bidder. My team discovered the depth of their infiltration during a surveillance op in Samurand. We had enough evidence to burn their entire network to the ground. So they had us eliminated. Or so they thought. The hangar was a tinderbox of shock and outrage. Senior officers crowded around the cockpit as Nora pointed to patterns on the screen, linking specific data, leaks from the base, to compromised missions and unexplained casualties in the field. She pointed to a recent incident where a patrol was ambushed. This leak originated from a terminal in your intelligence wing, Colonel, 2 hours before the patrol was hit. And the Apache? Thorne asked, his voice strained. Why this specific aircraft? Because this isn't just any Apache, Nora replied. This is the first airframe fitted with the prototype for the new Argus targeting array, a system that Obsidian Hand themselves helped develop as a subcontractor. She tapped the screen. I've spent months modifying their own backdoors, turning their listening post into my microphone. The Argus array doesn't just target, it records everything. Every transmission, every data burst. It holds the final, unbreakable proof of their entire network. The key to decrypting it all is on a drive inside this system. She looked at the assembled soldiers. They've been looking for me for 5 years. The ghost they couldn't confirm was dead. When Major Donovan recognized this patch, it was like a flare going up in the dark. They know I'm here now. She paused, her gaze distant. And they are coming. As if her words were a command, a deep, resonant boom rolled across the base from the north perimeter. The ground trembled slightly. A split second later, the piercing, frantic wail of the base-wide attack sirens erupted, shattering the desert silence. The sirens acted as a catalyst, transforming the stunned silence of the hangar into organized chaos. Officers barked orders, soldiers scrambled for their gear, and the routine of the base was instantly replaced by the grim choreography of combat. Through it all, Eleonora Vance was a pillar of calm. The years of hiding fell away like a shed skin, revealing the commander beneath. That's the north perimeter, Colonel Thorne yelled over the din, already moving toward the command post. Maximum confusion. They hit us at shift change. Standard Obsidian tactics, Nora confirmed, her voice cutting through the noise with chilling authority. They'll use the perimeter breach as a diversion. Their primary strike team is already inside the wire. Their target is this hangar. They need to destroy this Apache before the data can be extracted. Captain Cole, his face a mask of shame and newfound purpose, ran to her side. What are your orders, ma'am? He asked, the ma'am filled with the weight of his earlier disrespect. Nora's eyes locked onto his. There was no time for recriminations. Captain, your people know these machines better than anyone. I need this hangar locked down. Barricade the entrances. Get every weapon you can find into the hands of your mechanics. They may be technicians, but they're soldiers first. Hold this position. Cole nodded sharply and began shouting orders, his voice now firm and clear. The mechanics, who moments ago saw Nora as a feeble old woman, now looked at her with a mixture of awe and terror and obeyed without hesitation. Major Donovan returned to her side, his flight helmet on, a rifle in his hands. How many are we expecting? A platoon, at least, Nora assessed calmly. 20, maybe 30 operators. Former special forces, top-tier equipment, and they're ruthless. They won't stop until they, or we, are dead. Donovan glanced at the handful of mechanics struggling to move tool chests into a makeshift barricade. Ma'am, with all due respect, a hangar full of support personnel isn't going to hold off a platoon of elite mercenaries. For the first time that day, a flicker of something that might have been a smile touched Nora's lips. It was a cold, grim sight. You're right, Major. She walked to her old toolkit, the one a young soldier had so gallantly offered to carry for her that morning. She kicked the side, and a false bottom popped open, revealing a compact H&K sidearm, several magazines, and a wicked-looking combat knife. That's why we're not going to hold the hangar, she said, strapping the weapon to her thigh with practiced efficiency. We're not going to be here when they arrive. The roar of approaching gunfire grew louder, punctuated by the sharp crack of sniper fire impacting the hangar's metal walls. The barricaded doors shuddered from the force of an explosion just outside. Nora turned to Donovan, her eyes blazing with an intensity that defied her age. This isn't about defense. It's about escape and evasion. This fight won't be won on the ground. She pointed decisively at the Apache, its cockpit glowing invitingly. That's our battlefield. Major, get in the pilot's seat. Prepare for immediate takeoff. Donovan stared at her, a wild, exhilarating understanding dawning on his face. This wasn't a siege. It was a jailbreak. We can't just abandon the base. Colonel Thorne yelled, having returned from the command post. We're not abandoning it, Colonel. We're completing the mission. Nora countered, her voice ringing with absolute conviction. We get this data out, we cut the head off the snake. That's the only way to save this base and every other one they've compromised. We take the war to them. She looked at Donovan. Now, Major. As Donovan scrambled into the pilot's seat, Nora turned to the remaining Marines guarding the door. Give us 2 minutes, then fall back to the command post. The Marine lieutenant nodded, his face grim. Yes, ma'am. Good hunting. Nora swung herself up into the gunner's seat with an agility that belied her 60 years. As the canopy hissed shut, sealing them in the armored bubble of the cockpit, the world outside became a muted panorama of smoke and muzzle flashes. The Apache's turbines spun to life with a deafening roar. You remember how to do this, Colonel? Donovan shouted over the engines, his hands flying across the controls. Nora's fingers danced over the weapon's console, her touch light and sure. The Argus array flared to life, its customized interface glowing on her screen. A small, cold smile touched her lips. It's like riding a bicycle, Major. A bicycle that fires Hellfire missiles. The main hangar doors buckled inward under the force of a massive explosion. Through the smoke and debris, Nora could see the sleek, black-clad forms of Obsidian Hand operators pouring through the breach. Tower, this is Ghost 1. Requesting immediate takeoff. Danger close. Donovan yelled into his radio. A frantic voice crackled back. Ghost 1, you are clear. Go, go, go. The Apache leaped from the ground, its powerful rotors kicking up a storm of dust and debris. Below them, the battle for the hangar was a chaotic firefight. As they ascended, the full scale of the attack became terrifyingly clear. Obsidian forces were swarming the base, their assault professional and overwhelming. They really want you dead, Donovan grunted, banking the helicopter sharply to avoid incoming rocket fire. They want this data erased, Nora corrected, her eyes glued to the targeting screen. My death is just a bonus. As they cleared the base perimeter, a series of sharp beeps filled the cockpit. Missile locked, Donovan announced, his voice tight but steady. He slammed a button, and the Apache shuddered as it released a volley of brilliant flares. A missile streaked past them, veering off to detonate harmlessly against a distant sand dune. We've got company, Nora said calmly, pointing to 2 new contacts appearing on radar. 2 unmarked attack helicopters, fast and closing in. Obsidian air support. Can we outrun them? We won't have to, Nora replied, her voice dropping to a predatory calm. She designated the lead enemy helicopter, the Argus system locking on with terrifying speed and precision. I have a solution. Fire when ready, Major. The Apache shuddered as a missile launched from its wing pylon. The enemy chopper broke hard, but the missile adjusted its course, an unshakable predator. The explosion was a brilliant, silent flower against the dawn sky. The second helicopter, seeing its wingman obliterated, veered away and fled. With the immediate threat gone, Nora set a course for the regional CENTCOM headquarters. As the Apache streaked toward the rising sun, she looked back at Kestrel Base one last time. The fighting still raged, but the tide would turn. The ghost had not only returned, but had taken flight, carrying the truth with her. The data from Valkyrie 7 led to the complete dismantling of Obsidian Hand and exposed corruption at the highest levels of military contracting. Eleonora Vance, the woman who was officially dead, was quietly reinstated, her record sealed once more, her legend whispered only in the most secure of rooms. Some heroes live in the shadows by choice, carrying the weight of classified truths and unacknowledged sacrifices. They never ask for recognition, but sometimes when the moment demands it, they step back into the light, reminding us all that the quietest among us often carry the heaviest burdens. Eleonora Vance's story reminds us that heroes don't have an age limit or a uniform. They're defined by their courage. Do you know someone in your life who is underestimated? Share your thoughts in the comments, but please comment respectfully. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories.